The day Luca DeSantis picked a +1 for his sister's wedding, he didn't choose any of the elite women that lined up for him. He picked her, Mara Collins, his maid. And when she showed up in a wheelchair, wearing the confidence of a woman who didn't belong in that room, the entire hall erupted into chaos, because the most feared mafia boss in Italy had just made his most dangerous choice. In public. Welcome back, romance story lovers. Please don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot to me. The west wing of the DeSantis estate stretched endlessly, its marble floors gleaming under crystal chandeliers that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Mara Collins pushed her wheelchair forward, a basket of fresh linens balanced on her lap, her movements practiced and silent. 3 years she had worked here, 3 years of being invisible, and that was exactly how she preferred it. The family gathering in the main hall meant nothing to her. She had learned early that the less she knew about the DeSantis family business, the safer she remained. But as she approached the service door, voices carried through the ornate panels, and one voice in particular made her pause. Luca DeSantis, the eldest son, the one they whispered about in town with equal parts fear and reverence. "I need someone for the wedding," his deep voice cut through the chatter. "Marco deserves to have the entire family there, without questions about why his brother came alone." Mara began to wheel herself away, but the door suddenly opened. She found herself face to face with the most dangerous man in northern Italy. Luca DeSantis stood there, his dark eyes scanning the hallway before landing on her. Something shifted in his expression, a recognition that made her breath catch. "You," he said simply, stepping into the hallway. Behind him, she could see the crowded room of Italy's most powerful families. "Come inside." "Sir, I was just delivering linens to the guest rooms," Mara managed, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Leave them. Come inside." It wasn't a request. The next thing Mara knew, she was being wheeled into a room full of people who turned to stare. Women in designer gowns, men in tailored suits worth more than cars. And at the center of it all, Luca's hand on her wheelchair, guiding her forward with a possessiveness that made the room collectively hold its breath. "This is Mara Collins," Luca announced, his voice carrying absolute authority. "She'll be attending Marco's wedding as my date." The silence that followed was deafening. His aunt, Francesca, nearly dropped her champagne glass. Noah Reed, Luca's most trusted consigliere, looked ready to intervene, but wisely remained silent. Marco himself, the groom-to-be, raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. The power Luca commanded meant that no one, not even family, questioned his decisions publicly. "Luca," Francesca finally found her voice. "Surely there are more appropriate choices. The Benedetti daughter, or perhaps someone from the Moretti family, would be more suitable for such an occasion." "Mara is my choice," Luca said with finality that brooked no argument. His dark gaze swept the room, daring anyone to challenge him. When no one did, he looked down at Mara, and for the first time, she saw something unexpected in his eyes. Not pity, not calculation, but something that made her chest tighten. Later that evening, after the family had dispersed, Mara found herself in Luca's private study. She had tried to return to her quarters, but he had sent for her immediately. The study was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate grounds. Luca stood by the window, a glass of whiskey in his hand, his reflection sharp against the darkening sky. "You're going to refuse," he said without turning around. "I can see it in the way you're gripping your wheels." "Mr. DeSantis, with all respect, I'm staff. I clean your house. This isn't appropriate, and we both know it." He turned then, and the intensity in his gaze made her forget to breathe. "You're the only person in this house who has never asked me for anything. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone wants something from me. Power, money, protection, favors. But you just do your work and meet my eyes without calculation. Because I'm not part of your world, Mara said softly. I'm just trying to survive in it. And that's exactly why I need you there. He moved closer, and she caught the scent of his cologne, something expensive and understated. My brother's wedding will be full of vultures circling, waiting for weakness. Every woman there will be calculating how to trap me or my brother into some arrangement. But you won't be. You'll just be yourself. The next morning brought chaos to Mara's usually predictable routine. She was awakened not by her alarm, but by a knock on her door in the staff quarters. 3 women entered, armed with measuring tapes, fabric samples, and determined expressions. Behind them, Luca appeared in the doorway, looking every inch the powerful man he was even in casual clothes. They're here to prepare you, he said simply. Whatever you need, whatever you want, just tell them. This is too much, Mara protested, but he was already moving into her small room, making it feel even smaller with his presence. Nothing is too much, he said, and there was something in his voice that made her stop arguing. You deserve to be seen, Mara. Not hidden, not minimized. Understood? She nodded, unable to form words as he turned and left. The stylists immediately descended upon her, talking rapidly in Italian about colors and cuts and accessibility. They were kind but efficient, treating her not as an oddity, but as their most important client. When they presented fabric samples, one caught her eye immediately. A deep emerald green that reminded her of the forests she used to walk through before the accident. 2 days passed in a blur of fittings and preparations. Mara was moved from the staff quarters to a guest suite on the 2nd floor, despite her protests. The room was luxurious beyond anything she had ever experienced, with a bathroom specifically modified for accessibility. She found herself wondering why Luca had such accommodations already in place, but didn't dare ask. On the 3rd evening, she was summoned to dinner. Not in the staff kitchen where she usually ate, but in the private dining room reserved for family. Luca was there alone, the long table set for 2. He stood when she entered, a gesture that surprised her. You need to be comfortable around me before the wedding, he explained, pulling out a chair that had been removed to make space for her wheelchair. My family will be watching everything. Any discomfort will be seen as weakness. And weakness is dangerous in your world, she said, positioning herself at the table. You understand more than you let on. He sat across from her, studying her with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Tell me about before. Before? Before the wheelchair. Before you came to work here. You weren't always invisible, were you? The question hit too close to truth she had buried deep. Everyone has a past, Mr. DeSantis. Some of us just prefer to leave it there. Luca, he corrected. If you're going to be on my arm at the wedding, you need to call me Luca. The way he said it, the way his name felt on her tongue when she finally repeated it, changed something between them. The formal distance she had carefully maintained began to crack. As they ate, he asked her opinions about things that had nothing to do with cleaning or service. Books she had read, places she wished to see, music she enjoyed. He listened with an intensity that was both flattering and unnerving. Later that week, the dress arrived. Mara was in the suite's sitting room, reading, when Luca appeared with a large box. He set it on the table and stood back, watching as she opened it. The emerald gown was more beautiful than she had imagined, with intricate beadwork that caught the light and a cut that would flow elegantly over her seated form. Try it on, he said softly. Now? I want to see it. Make sure it's perfect. She wheeled herself to the bedroom, her heart pounding. The dress fit like it had been made for her, which of course it had. When she emerged, Luca's reaction was immediate and visceral. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched at his sides, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. "You're beautiful," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "They won't be able to look away. Is that what you want? For them to stare?" He moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "I want them to see that you belong with me, that you're under my protection, that anyone who even thinks about disrespecting you will answer to me." The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Wanted. Seen. The morning of the wedding arrived too quickly. Mara woke to find a full team waiting to prepare her. Hair, makeup, nails, everything attended to with meticulous care. Luca had sent a note with them, just 2 words in his bold handwriting. "Wear this." Attached was a velvet box containing a necklace that made her gasp. Diamonds and emeralds that matched her dress perfectly, clearly worth more than she had earned in her entire life. When Luca arrived to collect her, he stopped in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and commanding presence. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them charged with something neither wanted to name. "You're stunning," he said finally, moving into the room. "But you're nervous." Anyone would be nervous about to enter a room full of Italy's most powerful families, while pretending to be something they're not. "You're not pretending anything," he said firmly, kneeling in front of her wheelchair so they were eye level. "You're Mara Collins. You're with me because I chose you. That's all anyone needs to know." The drive to Lake Como was silent, but not uncomfortable. Luca's hand rested on the console between them, and occasionally, Mara caught him glancing at her. The venue was a massive villa overlooking the lake, its gardens strung with thousands of lights that reflected off the water like stars. As they approached the entrance, Luca stopped and turned to her. "Remember, you belong here because I say you do. Anyone who suggests otherwise will regret it." "You can't threaten everyone who looks at me wrong," she said with a nervous laugh. "Watch me," he replied, and there was no humor in his voice. The ballroom was a symphony of wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over marble floors, and conversations in multiple languages created a sophisticated buzz. But the moment Luca entered with Mara, a hush fell over the crowd. Every eye turned to them, to the feared Mafia boss and the woman in the wheelchair at his side. Luca's hand moved to the back of her chair, but it felt more like an embrace than assistance. He guided her through the crowd with absolute confidence, stopping to introduce her to people whose names she recognized from newspapers and whispered conversations. Each time, he said her name with pride, as if she were precious to him. "Luca," a woman's voice called out, dripping with false sweetness. A stunning blonde in a red dress that left little to imagination approached them. "I heard you were bringing someone, but I didn't believe it." "Alessandra," Luca's voice was cold. "This is Mara Collins." Alessandra's gaze swept over Mara dismissively. "How interesting. Where did you two meet? At one of those charity events you're forced to attend?" Before Mara could respond, Luca's hand moved to her shoulder, a protective gesture that made Alessandra's eyes narrow. "Where we met is none of your concern. What should concern you is showing respect to my date." The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Alessandra paled and quickly excused herself. As she walked away, Mara heard her whisper to another woman, "She's just staff. I've seen her cleaning his house." The word stung, but before she could react, Luca was leaning down, his breath warm against her ear. "She's jealous because she's been trying to get my attention for years, and you managed it without even trying." As the evening progressed, Mara began to relax slightly. Luca never left her side, his attention completely focused on her. When dinner was served, He ensured her place was perfectly positioned, that she had everything she needed. He included her in conversations, valued her opinions, and shut down anyone who dared to condescend to her. During Marco's speech, thanking everyone for coming to celebrate his marriage, Luca's hand found hers under the table. The touch was electric, unexpected, and when she looked at him, he was watching his brother, but his thumb was tracing gentle circles on her palm. When the dancing began, Mara expected Luca to excuse himself to socialize. Instead, he stood and extended his hand to her. "Dance with me." "Luca, I can't." "Yes, you can. Trust me." He guided her wheelchair to the center of the dance floor, then did something that made the entire room hold its breath. He knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his, and began to move with the music, creating their own version of a dance. His eyes never left hers, and in that moment, everyone else disappeared. "Lift your chin," he said softly. "Let them stare. You're the most beautiful woman in this room, and you're with me." The intensity of the moment, the way he looked at her like she was everything, made her heart race. She was falling for him, and that terrified her more than any threat ever could. But then, over his shoulder, she saw something that made her blood run cold. A man near the balcony was watching her, not with the curious interest of the other guests, but with recognition. She knew that face, those cold blue eyes that had haunted her nightmares for years. It was Marcus Webb, Victor Hale's right-hand man, the reason she had run, the reason she had hidden herself away in this wheelchair, in this life of invisibility. Her hands tightened in Luca's grip, and he immediately sensed the change. "What is it?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. "We need to leave," she whispered. "Please, Luca, we need to leave now." He didn't question her. In one fluid movement, he stood and began guiding her toward the exit, his body language radiating enough threat that people automatically moved out of their way. But Marcus was already moving too, following them with determined steps. They made it to the car, and Luca practically lifted her from the wheelchair into the seat before folding the chair and throwing it in the trunk. He was behind the wheel in seconds, the engine roaring to life. "Who was he?" Luca asked as they sped away from the villa. "Someone from my past," Mara said, her voice shaking. "Someone I thought I had escaped." "No one escapes me once I decide they're mine," Luca said with dark certainty. "And you're mine now, Mara. Whoever he is, whatever he wants, he'll have to go through me." Back at the estate, Luca carried her inside despite her protests, setting her gently on the couch in his study before retrieving her wheelchair. He poured himself a drink, then sat across from her, waiting. The silence stretched between them until finally Mara found her voice. 6 years ago, I witnessed something I shouldn't have. My ex-boyfriend David was involved with a man named Victor Hale. They were moving money through legitimate businesses, cleaning it for various criminal operations. I didn't know at first. I thought David just worked in finance. But one night, I came home early from work and overheard them discussing a murder they had covered up. The murder of a federal investigator who had been getting too close. Luca's expression darkened with every word. And the man at the wedding? Marcus Webb, Victor's enforcer, the one who would have killed me if I hadn't run. The accident that put me in this wheelchair? It wasn't entirely an accident. My car was run off the road, but they thought I died in the crash. I let them think that. Changed my name, disappeared, became invisible. And you've been hiding ever since, Luca said softly. That's why you never asked for anything, never drew attention to yourself. You were afraid they'd find you. She nodded, tears threatening to fall. And now they have. I'm so sorry, Luca. I never meant to bring this danger to your door. He was in front of her in an instant, kneeling again, his hands framing her face. Look at me, he commanded, When she did, his eyes were blazing with fury, and something else. Something that made her breath catch. You are under my protection now. Mine to keep safe. Mine to defend. And if Victor Hale thinks he can touch you, he's about to learn why everyone fears the DeSantis name. The next few days passed in a blur of increased security and tension. Mara was moved to a suite adjoining Luca's rooms, with guards posted at all entrances. She protested the measures, but Luca was immovable. His protective instincts had shifted into overdrive, and she found herself constantly under his watchful gaze. "This is excessive," she said one evening as they ate dinner in his private dining room. "I'm not worth starting a war over." His fork clattered against his plate as he set it down with controlled force. "You don't get to decide what you're worth to me," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "That's my decision, and I've made it. Luca, be reasonable. You barely know me." "I know enough," he said, standing and beginning to pace, a caged predator in an expensive suit. "I know you're the first person in years who looked at me and saw just a man, not a bank account or a threat. I know you work harder than anyone else in this house, despite having every reason to be bitter about life. I know that when you smile, really smile, it's like the sun coming out." He stopped pacing and turned to her, his expression raw. "I know that the thought of losing you to Victor Hale makes me want to burn his entire world to the ground." The air between them crackled with tension. Mara's heart was racing, her skin flushed with heat that had nothing to do with the fireplace crackling nearby. "You can't just claim me like I'm property, Luca." "I'm not claiming you as property," he said, moving closer. "I'm claiming you as mine to protect, mine to care for, mine to—" He stopped, his jaw clenching as he fought for control. "Yours to what?" she challenged, even though part of her already knew the answer. "Mine to love," he said roughly. "If you'll let me." Before she could respond, Noah burst into the room. "Boss, we have a problem. Marcus Webb just requested a meeting. He says he has a message from Victor Hale." Luca's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the cold, dangerous man that ruled the Northern Territories. "Set it up. Neutral ground. Full security." "Luca, no," Mara said, reaching for his hand. "This is exactly what I didn't want. You don't have to do this." He knelt in front of her again, taking her hands in his. "Yes, I do. Because you're no longer just under my protection, Mara. You're under my heart, and I protect what's mine with everything I have." The meeting was set for the following night, at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Milan. Luca wanted Mara to stay at the estate, but she refused. If this was about her, she needed to be there. After much argument, he relented, but only on the condition that she stayed in the bulletproof car with 2 of his best men. From the car, she watched Luca stride into the warehouse with Noah and 4 other men. He moved with lethal grace, every inch the dangerous man his reputation proclaimed. Marcus Webb was already there with his own contingent, looking nervous despite his attempts at bravado. "Your little maid has something that belongs to Mr. Hale," Marcus said, his voice carrying in the empty space. "Mara Collins belongs to no one but herself," Luca replied coldly. "But she is under my protection, which means anyone who threatens her threatens me. Is Victor prepared for that war? She has information that could destroy Mr. Hale's operations, information she stole. Information she accidentally overheard about federal murder," Luca corrected. "Which makes Victor nervous, I'm sure. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus. You're going to go back to Victor and tell him that Mara Collins is off limits. She has no interest in his business, has never spoken of what she knows, and never will as long as she's left in peace. And if Mr. Hale doesn't agree?" Luca smiled then, and it was terrifying. "Then remind him that I have connections he can only dream of. Federal investigators who owe me favors. Interpol agents on my payroll. Evidence of his money laundering operations that I've collected just in the past 3 days. I can destroy him with a phone call, Marcus. The only reason I haven't is because Mara asked me not to escalate. But if he pushes me, if he even thinks about touching her, I will end him. Marcus paled visibly. Everyone knew Luca DeSantis didn't make empty threats. I'll relay the message. Good. And Marcus, tell Victor he has 24 hours to agree to my terms. After that, I stop being civilized about this. As they drove back to the estate, Mara couldn't stop shaking. Luca pulled her from her wheelchair and into his lap, holding her against his chest, despite her weak protests. It's okay, he murmured against her hair. You're safe. I won't let anyone hurt you. You just threatened to start a war for me, she whispered against his shirt. I'd start 100 wars for you, he said simply. I'd burn the whole world down if it meant keeping you safe. That night, unable to sleep, Mara wheeled herself out to the balcony adjoining her room. The night was clear, stars visible despite the lights from the city in the distance. She didn't hear Luca approach until he was beside her, leaning against the railing. Can't sleep either, he asked softly. Too much spinning in my head, she admitted. Luca, what you said earlier, about loving me. I meant it, he interrupted. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I meant every word. How can you love someone like me? I'm broken, Luca, literally and figuratively. He turned to face her fully, his expression fierce. You're not broken. You're the strongest person I know. You survived something that should have killed you, rebuilt your life from nothing, and still managed to keep your kindness, your integrity. You think the wheelchair makes you less? It doesn't. It's just part of you, like your green eyes, or the way you bite your lip when you're thinking. You notice that? I notice everything about you, he said, moving closer. The way you hum when you think no one's listening. The way you always make sure the other staff have eaten before you take your own meal. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching, like you're trying to figure me out. The tension between them was almost unbearable now. Mara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Luca! Tell me to walk away, he said roughly. Tell me to leave you alone, and I will. But if you don't... Instead of speaking, she reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. He closed his eyes at the contact, a shudder running through his powerful frame. When he opened them again, they were dark with desire. Mara, he breathed, and then he was kissing her. The kiss was everything, and nothing like Mara had imagined. Luca's lips were softer than she expected, but the way he kissed her was pure possession, pure need. His hand tangled in her hair, while the other cupped her face with surprising gentleness. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I shouldn't have done that, he said, but he didn't move away. Why? She challenged, still tasting him on her lips. Because once I start, I won't want to stop, he admitted. And you deserve better than a man like me. Someone without blood on his hands. Someone who can give you a normal life. I don't want normal, she said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. Normal left me broken on the side of a road. Normal let me disappear for years. You make me feel alive again, Luca. You make me feel like I matter. He kissed her again, deeper this time, and she felt herself getting lost in it. But then her phone rang, shattering the moment. It was the emergency line from the staff quarters. Maria, one of the other maids, was crying. Miss Collins, there's a man here. He says he has a message for you. He's hurt Sophia. Please, we need help. Luca took the phone from her nerveless fingers. Lock yourselves in the pantry. Security is already on the way. He ended the call and was immediately on his own phone, barking orders in rapid Italian. Within minutes, the estate was in lockdown. Luca lifted Mara from her chair despite her protests, carrying her to his office, which had reinforced walls and bulletproof glass. Noah appeared with several armed men. It was a diversion, Noah reported. While we were focused on the staff quarters, someone broke into the guest house. They left this. He handed Luca a photograph. It was of Mara from years ago, before the accident, walking on a beach. Written on the back were the words, "She was beautiful when she could walk. Maybe she'll walk again when you're dead." Luca's expression turned murderous. "Double the guards. No one gets in or out without my permission. And find out how they got this close." The next 3 days were tense. Mara was essentially under house arrest, though Luca tried to make it comfortable. He worked from his office so he could be near her, had meals brought up so they could eat together. But the easy intimacy from the balcony was gone, replaced by a careful distance. "You're pulling away," she said on the third evening, as they sat in his study. "I'm trying to protect you," he replied, not looking up from his papers. "By shutting me out?" He set down his pen and finally looked at her. "By not giving them more ammunition. They're watching, Mara, looking for weaknesses. If they know what you mean to me—" "They already know," she interrupted. "You threatened to start a war for me, remember? So stop pretending this is just about protection." Before he could respond, his phone rang. The conversation was brief and in Italian, but she could see his expression darkening with every word. "Victor wants to meet," he said when he hung up. "Tonight. He's here in Milan." "Let me come with you," Mara said immediately. "Absolutely not. Luca, this is my fight too. I'm the one he's after." "Which is exactly why you're staying here," he said firmly. "I won't risk you." But Mara had spent years running, years being afraid. She was tired of it. "If you don't take me, I'll find a way to follow. You know I will." He studied her for a long moment, then cursed in Italian. "You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. Is that a yes?" "It's a maybe. If you come, you follow my rules absolutely. No arguments, no heroics." The meeting was at a restaurant Luca owned in the city center. It was closed for the evening, giving them privacy. Victor Hale was already there when they arrived, an older man with silver hair and cold eyes that reminded Mara why she had run all those years ago. "Miss Collins," Victor said with false pleasantness, "you look different. The wheelchair suits you, gives you an air of vulnerability that's quite becoming." Luca's hand tightened on her shoulder, and she could feel the rage radiating from him. "Watch your tongue, Hale, or you'll lose it." "Protective, isn't he?" Victor said to Mara. "But protection only goes so far. You have something I need, my dear. Information that could prove problematic if it fell into the wrong hands." "I've never spoken about what I heard," Mara said, proud that her voice remained steady. "I just wanted to disappear. And you did, quite effectively, until you caught the eye of Mr. DeSantis here. Love makes people visible, doesn't it? Makes them vulnerable." "Get to the point," Luca said coldly. "I want assurance that Miss Collins will never speak about what she knows. In exchange, I'll forget she exists." "And if we refuse?" Victor smiled, and it was chilling. "Then things become unpleasant. For everyone." Luca leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual confidence, but Mara could feel the tension in him. "Here's my counteroffer, Victor. You forget Mara exists, and I forget about the 3 federal agents you've had killed over the years." "Oh yes, I know about all of them. I have evidence, documents, recordings, everything needed to bury you." Victor's composure cracked slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Luca pulled out his phone and played a recording. Victor's voice, clear as day, ordering a hit on a federal investigator. The blood drained from the older man's face. "Where did you get that?" I have resources you can't imagine, Luca said simply. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Italy tonight. You're going to forget Mara exists. And if you ever come near her again, if you even think about her, I'll deliver everything I have to the authorities. And then, after you're arrested, I'll make sure you don't survive long enough to stand trial. The threat hung in the air between them. Victor looked from Luca to Mara, calculating. Finally, he stood. You've made your point. But remember, Mr. DeSantis, protecting her makes you vulnerable too. After he left, Mara was shaking. Luca immediately pulled her into his arms, wheelchair and all, holding her tight. It's over, he murmured. He won't bother you again. How can you be sure? Because he's a survivor, and he knows I don't make empty threats. Come on, let's go home. But as they were leaving the restaurant, a van screeched to a stop in front of them. Men in masks jumped out, and everything happened so fast. Luca pushed Mara's chair back, drawing his gun. But there were too many. She heard gunfire, saw Luca take down 2 of them before something hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. "Luca!" she screamed as more men surrounded them. One grabbed her wheelchair, and she fought as hard as she could, but it wasn't enough. The last thing she saw before a cloth covered her mouth was Luca on the ground, blood pooling beneath him, reaching for her as darkness claimed her. When Mara woke, she was in a warehouse, still in her wheelchair, but with her hand zip-tied to the arms. Marcus Webb stood in front of her, looking nervous. This wasn't the plan, he was saying to someone on the phone. DeSantis was supposed to back off, not get shot. Is he dead? Mara asked, her voice raw. Marcus looked at her. No, but he's hurt bad, which means we need to move fast before his men tear the city apart looking for you. Victor promised to leave me alone. Victor doesn't know about this, Marcus admitted. This is my play. You're my insurance policy. DeSantis has too much on us. But if I have you, he'll trade. The evidence for your life. You don't know Luca very well if you think he'll negotiate with kidnappers. As if to prove her point, Marcus's phone rang. He answered it, and his face paled. He held it out to her. It's for you. Noah's voice was deadly calm. Mara, are you hurt? No, I'm okay. How's Luca? Alive and furious. He wants you to know he's coming for you. Marcus has 1 hour to return you unharmed, or we burn everything down. Marcus grabbed the phone back. You'll get her back when I get guaranteed safe passage out of Italy, and all evidence destroyed. You have 1 hour, Noah repeated, and hung up. Marcus started pacing, clearly realizing he had miscalculated. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. Let me go, Mara said. It's your only chance. Luca doesn't forgive, and he doesn't forget. Shut up. I need to think. But there was no time to think. Within 30 minutes, the power went out in the warehouse. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. Then came the sound of vehicles surrounding the building. They found us, Marcus said, pulling out his gun. How did they find us so fast? The answer came in the form of an explosion that blew the main door off its hinges. Through the smoke, Luca emerged, his shoulder bandaged, but his gun steady. Behind him came what looked like an army of men. Step away from her, Luca commanded, his voice deadly. Marcus grabbed Mara's wheelchair, using her as a shield, his gun pressed to her temple. Back off, or she dies. You're already dead, Luca said calmly. The only question is whether it's quick or slow. Hurt her, and I promise you'll beg for death before I'm done. I'll kill her. No, you won't, Luca said with absolute certainty. Because you're a coward, Marcus. You always have been. You hide behind Victor's power. But alone? You're nothing. He took a step forward, and Marcus's hand shook. Stay back. Mara, Luca said, his eyes never leaving Marcus. "Close your eyes, baby." She did, and heard the gunshot. But it wasn't Marcus who fired. When she opened her eyes, Marcus was on the ground, clutching his hand where Luca had shot the gun from it. Luca was already moving, kicking Marcus away and kneeling beside her chair. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands gentle as he cut the zip ties. "No, but you are. You're bleeding again." Sure enough, his shoulder was seeping blood through the bandage, but he didn't seem to care, pulling her into his arms and holding her so tight she could barely breathe. "I thought I lost you," he said roughly. "When they took you, I thought—" "I'm okay," she assured him, her hands framing his face. "We're both okay." "No more distance," he said suddenly. "No more pretending this is just about protection. I love you, Mara. I need you to know that. I need you to believe it." "I love you too," she whispered, and he kissed her right there, surrounded by his men, with Marcus groaning on the floor, like none of it mattered except them. The next weeks passed in a blur of recovery and change. Luca's shoulder healed slowly, and he was a terrible patient, constantly trying to do too much too soon. Mara found herself in the unusual position of being the one giving orders, at least when it came to his health. "You need to rest," she said for the 100th time, finding him in his office when he should have been in bed. "I have work to do," he protested, but she could see the pain in his eyes. "The work can wait." She wheeled herself closer, taking his good hand in hers. "Please, Luca. For me?" He could never refuse when she asked like that. He let her lead him back to his room, let her help him get comfortable. But when she turned to leave, he caught her hand. "Stay," he said softly. "Just stay with me." She did, positioning her chair beside his bed, their hands linked as he finally allowed himself to rest. It became their routine. She would read to him, or they would talk about everything and nothing. The careful distance from before was gone, replaced by an intimacy that went deeper than physical touch. One evening, as his shoulder was finally healing properly, they were on his balcony watching the sunset. Mara was reading, while Luca worked on his laptop, but she could feel him watching her. "What?" she asked, looking up. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. "Not to the guest suite, not temporarily. Move in with me properly." Her heart skipped. "Luca, I know it's fast, but we've already been through more than most couples face in a lifetime. I want to wake up next to you. I want to come home to you. I want everyone to know you're mine, and I'm yours. People will talk. Your family, the other families. They'll all say you've lost your mind taking up with the help." He set aside his laptop and moved to kneel in front of her, taking her hands. "Let them talk. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me, and they know the consequences of that. Mara, you're not just under my protection anymore. You're under my heart. You own it completely." "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, I'll move in with you." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, a promise of forever. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I want to give you everything, Mara, everything you've ever wanted. I just want you," she said honestly. "Everything else is just extra." The move was both simple and complicated. Simple because she had so few possessions. Complicated because it meant accepting a new position in the household. She was no longer staff, but she wasn't exactly family either. The other employees didn't know how to treat her, and she could see their confusion. "Give them time," Luca said when she expressed her concerns. "Change is hard for everyone." But some changes came easier than others. The staff quickly learned that disrespecting Mara meant facing Luca's wrath. When one of the newer guards made a snide comment about her wheelchair, he was fired before the day was out. Word spread quickly. Mara was untouchable. 3 months into their new arrangement, Luca had a surprise for her. He led her to a part of the estate she had never seen, a renovated cottage near the garden. "What's this?" she asked as he opened the door. "It's yours," he said simply. "A space just for you, fully accessible, completely private. You can come here whenever you need time alone, or we can come together when we want to escape the main house." The cottage was beautiful, with wide doorways, an accessible bathroom, and a kitchen with counters at the perfect height. But what made her cry was the studio in the back, filled with art supplies. "You mentioned once that you used to paint," he explained, looking almost nervous. "Before the accident. I thought maybe you'd like to try again." She couldn't speak, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of it. Instead, she pulled him down for a kiss that said everything words couldn't. That night in the cottage, with rain pattering against the windows, they shared their first truly intimate moment. It was gentle and patient, Luca treating her like she was precious, breakable, until she showed him she was neither. Afterward, lying in the specially designed bed, she traced patterns on his chest while he played with her hair. "I never thought I'd have this," she admitted quietly. "After the accident, I thought this part of my life was over." "Nothing is over," he said firmly. "We're just beginning." But peace never lasted long in their world. The next morning brought news that Victor Hale had been arrested in Switzerland, and Marcus Webb had been found dead in his cell before he could testify. The official cause was suicide, but everyone knew better. "Did you?" Mara started to ask, but Luca cut her off. "I protected what's mine," he said simply. "I always will." It should have frightened her, this casual admission of violence, but she understood now that, in Luca's world, protection and love were often the same thing. He would never be a conventional man, never give her a conventional life. But conventional had never kept her safe. The announcement of their engagement came at another family gathering, this one for Luca's mother's birthday. When he stood and declared his intention to marry Mara, the room erupted. His mother cried with joy. Marco clapped him on the back, but Francesca looked ready to have a stroke. "This is unacceptable," she hissed. "She's nobody. She has no family, no connections, no value to our organization." "She has value to me," Luca said coldly. "That's all that matters." "Think about what you're doing," Francesca pressed. "Think about your position, your reputation." "I am thinking," Luca replied. "I'm thinking that I've found a woman who sees me as a man, not a bank account or a stepping stone. I'm thinking that she's shown more courage and integrity than anyone else in this room. I'm thinking that if you can't respect my choice, you can leave." The threat was clear. Support the engagement, or lose access to the family's power. One by one, the family members offered their congratulations, some more sincere than others. But Mara could see the calculation in their eyes. They were already figuring out how to use this to their advantage. "They're going to make your life difficult," she warned him later. "Let them try," he said, pulling her close. "I've faced down rival families, federal investigators, and international crime syndicates. I think I can handle a few disapproving relatives." The wedding planning began immediately, with Luca insisting on the best of everything. When Mara protested the extravagance, he silenced her with a kiss. "You deserve the world," he said. "Let me give it to you." But a week before the wedding, everything nearly fell apart. Mara overheard a conversation she shouldn't have. Two of Luca's lieutenants discussing a shipment, discussing things that reminded her too much of Victor's operations. The reality of what Luca was, what he did, crashed over her like a cold wave. She was in the cottage when he found her, bags half-packed. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I can't do this," she said, not looking at him. "I can't pretend I don't know what you do, what this life means. I've never hidden it from you. No, but I've been hiding from it. telling myself you're different, that what we have exists separately from all that. But it doesn't, does it? He moved closer, and she could feel the heat of him, the magnetic pull that always existed between them. No, it doesn't. This is who I am, Mara. I can't change that. But I can promise you this. Everything I do, every decision I make, is to protect what's ours, to build something that will last. Built on blood and crime. Built on power and loyalty, he corrected. In this world, those are the only currencies that matter. But you, what we have, that's beyond all of it. That's real, in a way nothing else in my life has ever been. She finally looked at him, seeing the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that she would leave. I'm scared, Luca. Scared of losing myself in this world. Scared of becoming someone I don't recognize. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. You won't. You'll change me before this world changes you. You already have. I'm not the same man I was before you. I'm better. Because of you. Promise me, she said, tears falling. Promise me that what we have will always be separate from that world. That our home will be a sanctuary. I promise, he vowed. Our home, our family, will be sacred. Untouchable. She believed him. God help her. She believed him. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. The ceremony was in the estate's garden, transformed into a wonderland of white roses and twinkling lights. Mara wore a dress specially designed to flow beautifully, whether she was seated or standing with assistants. Luca had insisted on the finest designers, the best of everything. As she was wheeled down the aisle by Marco, she saw Luca waiting for her at the altar, and the look on his face stopped her heart. He was crying, this dangerous man who terrified hardened criminals, crying at the sight of her. The ceremony was beautiful, the vows personal and powerful. When Luca promised to protect, cherish, and worship her for all his days, she felt it in her bones. When she promised to stand by him, to love him through darkness and light, she meant every word. You may kiss your bride, the priest said, and Luca didn't hold back. He kissed her like she was air, and he had been drowning, like she was the answer to every prayer he had never dared voice. The reception was a blur of congratulations, dancing, and joy. Luca never left her side, his hand always touching her somehow, as if he needed the constant reassurance that she was real, that she was his. During the father-daughter dance that Mara couldn't have, since her father had died years ago, Luca did something that made everyone stop and stare. He lifted her from her wheelchair, supporting her completely, and swayed with her to the music, her feet barely touching the ground. I've got you, he whispered in her ear. I'll always have you. Later, in their honeymoon suite, as they lay tangled together in the afterglow of their wedding night, Mara traced the scars on his chest, each one a story of survival. No regrets? He asked softly. None, she said firmly. You. Only that I didn't find you sooner. They spent their honeymoon in a villa on the Amalfi coast, just the two of them and a discreet security detail. For 2 weeks, they existed in a bubble of happiness, making love, talking for hours, planning their future. I want children, Luca said one evening as they watched the sunset from the terrace. Our children. Is that possible? Mara had wondered when this conversation would come. The doctors said it's possible, but it would be high risk. The accident caused some damage, but not enough to make it impossible. We'll get the best doctors, he said immediately. The best care, whatever you need. And if it doesn't happen? If I can't give you children? He turned her to face him, his expression fierce. Then we'll adopt, or we won't have children at all. You're enough, Mara. You'll always be enough. 6 months later, Mara stared at the pregnancy test in shock. Positive. She was pregnant. The doctor confirmed it that afternoon, along with a list of precautions given her condition. It would be difficult, require bed rest, possibly hospitalization toward the end. But it was possible. When she told Luca that evening, he went completely still. For a moment, she thought he was upset. Then he was on his knees, his hands gentle on her stomach, tears streaming down his face. "A baby," he whispered. "Our baby." "It'll be dangerous," she warned. "I might have to stop using the wheelchair for a while, be on complete bed rest." "Then I'll carry you everywhere," he said simply. "Whatever you need, whatever our baby needs, you'll have it." The pregnancy was difficult, as expected. By the 5th month, she was on bed rest. Luca worked from home, conducting business from the room adjoining theirs, so he could check on her constantly. He read to the baby every night, his hand on her swelling stomach, feeling every kick and movement. "She's going to be a fighter," he said one evening. They had found out it was a girl. "How do you know?" "Because she's half you," he said simply. "And you're the strongest person I know." When labor came 2 weeks early, Luca nearly lost his mind. The best doctors were called. The hospital cleared. He stayed by her side through every contraction, every push, whispering words of love and encouragement. When their daughter finally arrived, screaming and perfect, Luca held her with hands that shook. "She's beautiful," he breathed, "just like her mother." They named her Sophia Marie, after both their mothers. She had Luca's dark hair and Mara's green eyes, and from the moment she drew breath, she owned her father completely. "I never knew I could love like this," he said one night, holding Sophia, while Mara watched from the bed. "You've given me everything, Mara. A love I didn't deserve, a family I never thought I'd have." "You gave me the same," she reminded him. "You gave me a life when I thought mine was over. You saw me when I was invisible." "You were never invisible," he corrected, placing Sophia in her arms and sitting beside them. "You were just waiting for me to be smart enough to see what was right in front of me." 2 years later, as they watched Sophia take her first steps in the garden, Mara pregnant again with their son, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that first moment when Luca had chosen her for his brother's wedding, through danger and fear, through love and joy, they had built something unbreakable. "No regrets?" Luca asked, his hand on her growing belly. "Never," she said, leaning into his warmth. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." He kissed her temple, his other hand reaching out to steady Sophia as she toddled toward them. "My girls," he said, with such reverence it made her heart ache. "My whole world." As the sun set over the estate, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Mara knew that every moment of pain, every second of fear, had been worth it for this. For him. For their family. For the love that had transformed them both. In the distance, the estate's security moved like shadows, always watching, always protecting. The dangerous world Luca commanded still existed, still demanded his attention. But here, in their sanctuary, they were just a family. A man who would burn the world for his wife, a woman who had taught him to love, and their children who would grow up knowing they were cherished beyond measure. This was their happily ever after. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and theirs and forever. If you enjoyed this emotional, slow-burn story of power, vulnerability, and unexpected love, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more unforgettable stories like this. Love can bloom in the darkest places, and sometimes the most dangerous hearts need love the most. Remember, true love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who makes your imperfections feel perfect. Until next time, keep believing in love that conquers all. Tell me what type of content you will love to see on my channel, and I will make it available.